17th domestic policy issue, ecology, in which I include also really the management of the Earth's resources. First thing really is the important issue of global warming and the greenhouse gas phenomenon, emitting so much carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. Really, I mean, everybody's onto this now, but just to say that my thought about it is that if we do it and find it's not necessary, then it'll cost us something. If we don't do it and find it was necessary, it costs us everything. So we've got to take it seriously, whether we like it or not. The next thing is the government ownership of research into power generation. And I've done a separate video on this, but just briefly, I don't think that the present situation is satisfactory, where the government does really very little. It doesn't manage research as far as I can see. I mean, presumably it does fund research in universities, but most research into how we're going to generate renewable energy and into other methods of electricity generation are sort of farmed out, are sort of put out to the commercial sector, and then when they have made an invention, then we're going to have to pay the commercial company for it, and they'll have presumably the intellectual property to it and be able to sell it to us and to other countries in the world. I don't see why our government shouldn't actually do the research, fund the research, organise it, and then have the intellectual property to use it to benefit our nation and to sell abroad. Just to recap, really, the various sort of controversial or new means of generating electricity, which we're going to have to do a lot more of, because otherwise the lights are going to go out when our power stations, nuclear and conventional, are switched off at the end of their life in 3 or 4 years' time. So we've got to get our skates on. There's wind, which I think is I'm not sure about that. I think the rate paid for it by the government is artificially high, and so I think we've got our sums wrong there, really. And of course it doesn't generate anything when the wind doesn't blow. I think more attention should be given to tidal, particularly to tidal range generation, which is, it seems to me, more efficient. Water's so much heavier, and we know that the tide's going to come in and out, even if we don't know when the wind's going to blow. Geothermal, which apparently has great possibilities. Heat pumps, although at the moment they have to be driven by electricity, but they're a very efficient way of refrigerating the environment and using the heat obtained to heat one's house or one's factory or whatever. And there's research going on into that, and there's beginning industry in that. Thorium as an alternative to uranium for the generation of nuclear electric power. And this seems very attractive. There's research to be done about it, but it doesn't produce, and in fact it uses up the mountains of nuclear waste that we have. So that seems very attractive, and I think the government should be putting a lot of energy and money into developing that, and into nuclear fusion. I'm not sure where we're up to on that. Very importantly, clean coal, carbon capture and storage of coal, so that we can burn coal without putting a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, so that we can keep it in a solid form buried in the Earth's crust. And then also gas as well, and exciting possible developments of lots of gas under Lancashire. Now, also, there are things that we use combustible fuels for at the moment in our cars and trains and so on, that we could be using electricity for, wisely generated electricity that doesn't damage the environment. So I think we should go over more to trains, as I've also said elsewhere. And we should use bikes, we should use electric bikes, and we should, I believe, do research into the use of small internal combustion engines for motorcycles to make them more efficient, perhaps with diesel, with fuel injection, but on a small scale for small economical motorbikes. I don't mean big gutsy things that are as thirsty as cars. I mean little ones that we can actually get around when the petrol runs out. And then other resources, because it isn't only just energy that we're concerned about. Just as examples of things that we need for, from the Earth's crust: iron ore and bauxite for aluminium, lots of other things for copper and molybdenum and so on, and the rare earth elements which are needed in electronics and many other things, which at the moment the small number of countries have all the rare earth elements, and so they can withdraw supply, which China has done just recently, and it causes a bit of a panic. And another thing which one might not think of is farmland, and populous countries are interested in leasing farmland. In Africa, in Madagascar, South Korea has leased a large tract of land which otherwise would be there for feeding the Madagascans. But it's going to be an increasing pressure in the future, particularly for tropical countries, I think. And then oil and gas, which is what we normally think of, there's exploration, and there may be much more oil and gas around. It's more difficult to extract, but enough to keep us going. But there may not. We need to be not frivolous about it and burn off what our grandchildren and subsequent generations would otherwise have available to them. But I think a real important sort of conceptual issue is how we establish what is a fair price for natural resources, particularly those in the Earth's crust. Do we settle it by having a war over it? Do we settle it by threatening withdrawal of supplies and things like this? It would be so much better if we could act as a village, as a global village, and come to a reasonable settlement that everybody gets the necessities of life, and that we don't abuse each other or treat each other in a sort of brutal way by military means or political means or commercial means, or even by crime. I mean, oil has been thought of as dirty politics, and I'm afraid it may have been. Why did we go into Iraq? I think there may have been very good reasons, but it's hard to be sure that there weren't commercial reasons for wanting oil. And I'd like the world community to be able to rise above having these struggles for natural resources. Well, water, for drinking water is, and water for irrigation is another big issue. And it isn't all the problem of the Chinese or of the Americans, but they're big companies that have big appetites, and in China increasingly so. And we just need to work out how to live as a world community, and our country should be at the forefront of leading such sensible discussions so that we can live together peaceably.